Now let's talk about titles. The title shows what the relationship is between the two variables. We're going to talk about variables in a minute, but it should clearly explain what the experiment is doing or what it's for, and it should clearly outline what those two variables are. So for example, we could have a title like the effective forces on the rate of acceleration of bodies. From that title, we don't have to even know what that means, but we can clearly see we're talking about the effective force on acceleration. So there are two variables, and I'm looking for an effect, which is like a relationship, so I can immediately go, okay, I know what this experiment is. Calling it practical report, I have no idea what it's about, don't know what your variables are. So also remember, we're publishing to someone, we want them to read it through thousands of other articles that are being published, so give it something that's going to catch your attention. Ideally, it doesn't have to be, but it really should be an inquiry question, particularly if you're designing the experiment. But just about all experiments, the title, the name of the experiment should be an inquiry question. Some examples we can see. How does the rigidity of a modern day car influence the force experienced by an occupant? It's a question, it's an inquiry question. Again, we can see rigidity and force. They're the two things that we're investigating. We're changing this, we're probably measuring this. That's a really good example. To use the same example in a not so good, or in fact just a bad example, if you called it rigidity versus impulse force in collisions, it's okay. I've still clearly got the variables. I'm not really hooked. You haven't sold it to me, and it's not an inquiry question, so it's not so good. What about how does the change in distance affect the decibel reading of a sound source? It's a great question. It's almost like that clickbait. You're hooking them. They're like, ooh, I want to know this. How does the change affect it? We're clearly talking about distance and decibel reading, so obvious. The effect of stirring speed on the time taken to dissolve salt in water. It's okay. It's a good sentence. It's clearly stirring speed and dissolving time, but I could easily rephrase this into a how question. How does the stirring speed affect the time taken to dissolve salt in water? Much better. It's an inquiry question. It's really just rephrasing this into a question, but it's better.